Hey friends, my name's Georgie and you are listening to episode 6 of my new mini-series of the Just Breathe podcast, There Will Be Blood, a series of unapologetic conversations aiming to crush as many taboos as possible around the topic of women's health. And I truly believe that storytelling, connecting and speaking out are the best ways to do that. In today's powerful conversation, I'll be chatting to a good friend of mine, Pip, on the topic of addiction in young adults. Pip was generous enough to share her story with me on how she overcame her own addiction using exercise and spiritual practices, and the practice of yoga in particular. We got chatting about how alcoholism seems to have become normalised in young adults and how it's often treated as some sort of strange initiation into adulthood, creating unnecessary peer pressure and a really unhealthy idea of what is normal, whatever that word means anyway, right? But seriously, guilt and shame needs replacing with empowerment and support when it comes to addiction. And I really hope that this conversation is a step towards doing that. A little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. Let's keep connecting people. Let's keep empowering people through the power of the breath. All right, let's dive into today's really powerful conversation. I really hope you enjoy it and walk away feeling inspired and empowered. This is episode 6 of There Will Be Blood with Pip Iona Jones. Pip is in the house. Hello, Pip.
Hello.
How you doing, girl?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and just share your beautiful story.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really honoured.
Of course. Now, of course, I know a little bit about your story and your journey, but people listening do not. Now, we know we're going to get onto the topic of addiction and how you in particular used yoga to really elevate your life and to sort of kick the addiction that you had. But I'm going to let you tell the tale. So sort of where did it all start and where did the yoga come in? And can we get right into the crux of it?
Yeah, definitely. So I am only 24 and I am a creative person. I'm an artist. I've always had a lot of energy. And basically a few years ago, I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue. And unbeknownst to me, it turned out actually it was alcohol and a partying lifestyle that was really causing that. So, So what happened is in the lockdown about a year ago, I decided to go sober, and I found yoga was the vehicle or the thing that has genuinely kept me sober. And it's been an amazing journey, an amazing year, and it's just been great. I think that as humans, addiction is a very difficult topic to discuss, but I think we all have our own little addictions that we, you know, whether it's alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, any of it, internet, it's just all there in the modern world. I mean, we are so constantly stimulated all the time, and so it's so easy to fall into a trap of being addicted to something. For me, I think my job didn't help. Obviously, I was a bartender for a while, so kind of being constantly around it, alcohol was not a very healthy thing.
But
there's this author called Gabor Mate, I hope I'm saying that right. And he wrote a lovely, lovely book on addiction called In the Realms of Hungry Ghosts, Close Encounters of Addiction. And in the book, he says, passion creates and addiction consumes, which I think is a really powerful, powerful thing that he says, because when you're in the throes of addiction, I think you are so in the soup of it that you don't see any way out. And yoga like allowed the path, for me anyway, the path out.
Wow.
So to speak.
And but I mean, it's interesting to me as well that when you sort of listed off all of the common words we associate with addiction, alcohol, drugs, sex, they all seem to have a negative shadow cast upon them, when actually an addiction can be anything. You can be addicted to fitness, you can be addicted to even self-help and well-being practices. It's almost like anything that you give too large a dose to can become an unhealthy addiction. And I think it's a strong reminder that life is so much about that balance, that actually too much of anything can have a negative impact on you, even if it starts off as something that's really, really positive. Like even myself, I definitely would say at one point I used fitness as a distraction from facing my feelings or facing those more difficult feelings. And I suppose that's interesting, isn't it, with the alcohol, in terms of is that why you think you at first turned to sort of have a drink, because you were stressed, or because you were feeling some emotions you didn't want to deal with?
Definitely. I think for me it was a stress reliever for sure. 100%. You know, had a long day and stuff, and I think in society, I mean, it's definitely getting better, but I think it is so accepted that, you know, you've had a long day at work, so why not go and have a drink after work? Because, you know, you've deserved it, you've earned it. And I think it's so crazy how addictive, especially alcohol, is. I mean,
it's like a reward even they're putting it as, whereas it doesn't necessarily have a positive effect. It's like, here's the reward, here's a numbing effect as a reward for being overstimulated.
It totally disconnects one from reality. I mean, I really felt that at times, honestly, that like alcohol, it just disconnects you from the universe, the world. And yoga obviously allows you to kind of feel like we are all one. These are my thoughts on yoga, but we are all consciousness and we are all connected. And we live in a society that's sometimes so disconnected from each other that it feels like the only boundary that we can cross together is if we have a drink together, you know?
That it's also a form of social acceptance, because everyone wants to belong, don't they? Everyone wants to be part of a group or a community, or as to some degree. And that, you know, if all you're surrounded by is people that drink together, you'll almost feel like you're an outcast if you'll say, actually, I don't want to have a drink, so I know that it doesn't serve me, it's really addictive, it's a trigger of mine. So that's actually a really brave thing to do, to remove yourself sort of from that collective of people that perhaps you thought you felt really sort of in
connected
tune with, connected to at the time, because maybe that's that particular stress reliever that you shared. And I'm interested to ask, did the drinking sort of start in your university years? Was that the time?
So because I grew up abroad and stuff, so my first experience of living in the UK was when I was 18, and I started university, and it just felt like the normal thing to do. Like, you go out and you go drinking, and then I had a few difficult living situations, so I think I got into a bad habit then, and it kind of just progressed on and on and on. And I think the lockdown, as I said, really gave me time to reflect and obviously pull away from that quite negative society, because it's also quite an attention-seeking thing, I find.
Really?
Drink for me anyway, I think it was very attention seeking. It was very much like, I want to be seen, but in this way, but then also no one's actually getting to know the real you because of the alcohol. You kind of heightened emotions and you're just more outrageous or not, when actually I'm quite not quiet, but I'm introverted. I'm an introverted extrovert. So it's like, it brought out my very extroverted side.
And people only saw that side then, rather than actually an authentic version of yourself that was a bit more grounded and a bit more chill, maybe. That's really interesting, actually, isn't it? About sort of, I mean, showing our full selves as well, that perhaps whatever our addiction is perhaps that sort of double layer, that blinder, that we don't have to show our authentic selves, because that's vulnerable, isn't it? And I wonder if it is sort of all these addictions that we find are so common today, smoking, drinking, whatever, are sort of a detraction from showing our vulnerability, perhaps.
I think addiction is definitely a way to kind of close off yourself and not express your vulnerability. And I think it's just really interesting. Oh, wait 1 second, I'm just thinking. Well, as well, in this book they were saying that how addiction kind of extinguishes your passion for life.
Wow.
And your passion for kind of existence, and it incinerates the spark and the flame of life. And I just think that's really interesting, because I think it's like all about energy as well. It's like being in an addiction is a low energy thing. It's a low level energy, whereas like being sober, it's a high energy feeling. It's a higher realm, and in terms of the chakra system, addictions exactly. In the chakra system, it's like addictions right at the bottom. So if you've got an addictive personality, so if you need to shake off those addictions to kind of transcend further up the chakras. So I think that's really, really interesting.
That's really interesting, because when I even hear the word addiction, I mean, what is addiction if we break it down? I was once told addiction is dopamine plus adrenaline equals addiction. So that high, sort of that hug drug even, or that feeling of being connected, that false feeling, of course, because it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not an authentic connection. It's a connection that's created by alcohol. It'll come to me in a minute. But and plus that adrenaline, that buzz, that high. So when I think of the word addiction, I think of the high, right? But it's interesting how actually you're right. It's a high, but it's a draining high. It's a high that will drain you, because that low is so much lower. And I suppose those extreme highs and lows are things you can almost eliminate to come to a place of balance by using your own natural highs, which I suppose is what you're saying you found with yoga. I'd love to go more into that, actually. What happened?
Definitely.
The first sort of yoga practice where it sort of clicked and you thought, actually, I think I'm onto something here?
Definitely. So even before I started my sober journey, I went to a Kundalini yoga gathering last January before all the lockdowns. And I remember setting an intention that at that space, saying, I am going to change my job. I'm going to, work on my fitness, work on my health and stuff. But only a few months later did I really actually start that journey of wellness and things. And I remember my first yoga class, well, like in the person, and it was amazing. So it was a hatha yoga class, and it just felt like all the movements really were very self-healing, very grounding, connecting to your body that you've become so disconnected to. That finding that connection again back to the self it's just incredible, and is still as incredible.
Being able to really, really feel your body sort of in its true essence, is that sort of what you're referring to? Definitely
like you feel like connecting back to the authentic self, and kind of all those layers that have been built up, they just fall away, all the false negative layers, they just melt away doing yoga. It's there's nowhere to hide. It's just you, the mat. And I think that's really what it was for me. It was the mat, me. And I was like, I'm gonna do this. And I've been doing it for now like over a year or something crazy. But
did you feel like the mat then was sort of a holding safe space for you to be vulnerable? Because that sounds quite scary, the fact that there's nowhere to hide. We just talked about how alcohol or whatever your addiction is can be your armor, and so you've taken that armor off, you've got onto the yoga mat. what was it that made you feel safe? Was it sort of being in a class? Was it being guided through, or was it the practice of yoga itself? Can you pinpoint that, sort of what made you feel safe?
I think it was the combination of things. I think it was having a teacher that was really, really supportive. And I think it's also other people there are trying to better themselves. And I think it's that collective force and energy that flows around the room is just so strong. And you can feel everyone is there to better themselves in some way, you know, whatever journey they're on in their life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I found. And I found, you know, really connecting back to the floor, just the floor. It's just beautiful. And the breath, you know, definitely the breath, you know, that is something magical, just listening to breathing, you know.
Well, when you just allow yourself to breathe and get lost in a yoga practice, you're almost just giving your mind, that sort of monkey mind that doesn't stop chattering away, a bit of a rest as such. And perhaps as well, when you're connecting to breath and connecting to a yoga practice, a very embodied breathing practice almost, as how I see yoga, you're actually allowing that sort of more monkey mind to switch off, to allow the deeper stuff to come up, but so you can deal with the deeper stuff perhaps from the safe space of the mat. And I love that, how you talked about being surrounded by other people trying to better themselves. How important do you think it is to be surrounded by other people that are aligned with the improvement you're trying to make to your life? How important is that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. I think you've got to surround yourself with people that, you know, are supporting your journey, but also people that, you know, are more similar with your values, that you're now embracing and coming to terms with, you know, because I have had to lose a lot of friends over the last year because, you know, either they're not supportive or, you know, I can't find that connection that was there. But I think you've got to be pretty fearless, really. And it's so important having that community behind you and, you know, saying, yes, you can do it, you know, you're doing amazing, and having that motivation from other people is great, but you also have to find the motivation from yourself, because, you know, day in and day out, you have to say, well, I have to say to myself, I'm going to be sober today. And some days are really easy, some days are not, but, you know, every day I remind myself that that's the path I'm on.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're willing to go there, I'm interested to hear about those days that aren't so easy, in terms of when you are having a bad day, when you're much more likely to be tempted to reach for a drink. What is it that prevents you from going back to that vice of the alcohol?
I think for me, it genuinely works as I remind myself of how far I've come. And and I also remind myself of what I was like, and I was like, I don't want to be like that anymore. You know, I don't want to go back to that space. It was a dark space, really. It's like, I don't want to go back there. And then obviously I do meditate, so that really does help a lot. And just having a moment of mindfulness as well can just really switch your mind. Also just distract yourself as well. I mean, it's great. I've read so many books in the last year. Yes.
Do you know, Pip, what I love the way you're talking, because it's all such from a place of non-judgment. It's, you know, I think that maybe to me comes across as how you may have come through those sort of darker times when it might have been all too easy to grab a drink, to go there. It really sounds like you really sat with those feelings, those harder emotions, and said, I'm not going to judge myself for feeling this way. I'm not even going to judge myself for maybe even craving a drink, but I'm not going to do it because I honor almost who I have become. And that is so much, it's worth so much more than what I was. And I suppose it's that weighing up, isn't it? That sort of quick fix, that quick solution, which is all too common in this modern world, isn't it? With contactless payments, Deliveroo, right? It's all, everything's so accessible, that stuff that really requires doing the work, it has to come from a really deep place, doesn't it? To find that inner motivation, I suppose, to have that group of people around you that are cheering you on.
Yeah, definitely. You have to really, really dig deep down inside. And I think a really important thing with addiction is a lot of addictions do stem from some sort of trauma. You know, it's a very, very common is that if you have any traumas in your life, a lot of people have addictions. So it's kind of, you have to work through that as well. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Oh, I don't drink anymore, great. You know, you have to do the inner work. And I think that's really my main message, actually, is you have to do the inner work if you want to really change and transform and be, you know, the better version of you or your best self. Yeah, no, it's great. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in terms of going forward, I know you've mentioned to me before that you'd like to help other people on their sort of yoga journey and etc. So what advice would you give to someone who sort of knows that they have a problem, or knows that they we'll use alcohol as the example, sort of drink excessively, or feel like they're in a social situation where they just keep going there and they don't really want to? What advice would you give to that person, or even what advice would you give to your former self if you were to look back?
I think I definitely, as hard as it is, you need to speak out and talk to your friends or family member or someone that you trust very deeply, and just say, look, hey, like, you know what, my drinking's been getting out of control, it's or whatever, you know, and just say, I just think this, and have a proper open honest discussion. And then I think it all goes from there. I think with alcohol, obviously, because I've got experience with that, the most important thing you can do in early days of recovery is just distract yourself. Like, all you need to do, you just want to wear yourself out. You want to you want to go on like 3 runs a day, and you want to like, just when it's drink time, which for a lot of people's in the evening, you want to be doing something else.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, that was how it all started with the yoga. It actually started with running. So getting all the endorphins going, getting the heart rate up, felt amazing. So that was the gateway, and then yoga came afterwards. But having the physical exercise gives you the same high in the brain as a drink or a drug. It gives you the exact
adrenaline rush.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how our brains work. So you need to substitute the negative with something positive as well.
Right. So how important then is it to kind of do that inner work? And I suppose it's about awareness in finding that why, perhaps, of what, you know, every time I have a cigarette or every time I have a drink, what is the why that makes me go to get it? Or what do I get out of it that I am craving? And I suppose for you, if you said that alcohol gave you that high, if running gives you the same high, then fab, go for a run instead of having a drink. But at the same time, staying in balance, which I suppose is brilliant that you found the yoga, because the yoga helps you not to over exercise, because it's all about keeping that balance going, I suppose.
I think that's so true. It's about the balance as well, but it's also about the whole picture and the whole vision of your life. Because I think, you know, for me, it wasn't just one thing, it was work. I wasn't enjoying my job. You know, I wasn't enjoying where I was living, all these other things. So it's like, you know, obviously because I think when you come out of the drinking haze, it's like, whoa, I've got all these things I need to do. I've got all these things that I'm not happy with. So it's like, the key is just to work slowly at each thing. And then, you know, you end up with a life that you really love and enjoy. And, you know, you're like, oh, don't need alcohol.
I think that's a fantastic point, you know, especially for people listening that may be sort of ticking away in their minds now to think, you know, it's really time to do something about this, is perhaps, could you address one thing a month? One thing. If you're aware that the job is not serving you and that is fueling your addiction, could you just get that one thing sorted that month? And then maybe next month you're like, you know what, the way I'm eating is really not serving, or my social circles, or my relationship. And these are big things to address, of course. And so I think you're right that it can be overwhelming to step back and look at the entire picture and go, I'm not happy with any of it. And it's like, okay, but could you start with one thing? and go from there. I think that's a really, really fantastic point, as well as speaking out. I think that's a very vulnerable thing, to admit you need some help, and then to ask for it. Two big stages, especially as a British person. We don't like to ask for help, do we?
I think that's a really difficult thing. I think our society just wants us to be fine and, you know, just be like, oh yeah, it's fine, and just shrug push everything,
keep calm and carry on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, no, it doesn't work like that. You know, you really need to kind of speak out and raise your voice. And I was fortunate, you know, that I had someone to talk to at the time. And you know, it's just, you just need that. And even if you haven't got someone in your family or friends, you know, go speak to a counsellor, you know, or go to even Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I know that works wonders for some people. Personally, it wasn't for me, but for some people, they love that, you know. So you just have to find the thing that you can get on board with, you know.
Absolutely. Where do you want to go from here on your journey? What's next for you?
Oh, just only upwards. No.
Only upwards. Is that a big question? I mean, what do you see? What do you envision going forward? You know, you've come this far in a year. What's next? Where are you going next in your journey?
So with my journey, I'm definitely gonna get my yoga teacher training supported soon. Yay! And also afterwards, I'd love to work with addicts and substance abuse, people who have substance abuse issues, and also people with mental health issues, and do yoga classes with them, and get really involved in the community. And because I think there's so much power in, you know, transforming these people's lives, even if it gives them just that 1 hour of respite from their addiction or their problem or anything, to kind of give that out into the world and give that joy is just something I'm so deeply passionate about. You
can tell, absolutely. And I love that, actually, how you're really stepping away from the Instagram yoga. You know, there's so much of that right now, isn't there? As much as I love watching those videos and looking at those photos, I can't lie about that. It's a guilty pleasure, but at the same time, yoga is so much more than doing a handstand with loads of necklaces on, right? It's you know, it's so much more inner work happens with yoga, reconnecting you to your inner body, yourself, your authentic self, and you know, to remove the need to look aesthetically pleasing, and actually to say, listen, you can use this to find a safe space to express your vulnerability on the mat.
Definitely.
I think that is so needed and so incredibly powerful.
Yes, I agree. I feel that.
For sure. For sure.
I definitely think it's just amazing, because at the end of the day, you know, the yogi's path is a spiritual path, and it's a journey. And I think, as what you were saying, I think it's gotten quite lost in the Instagram and the kind of Western take on yoga. You know, it's just really warped what the kind of core concepts of yoga really are. You know, and I think there's totally a place for hot yoga and Instagram, and there's a place for that. But there's also, you know, a very nice place, the authentic kind of yogic philosophy and what that really means. And I think it's, for me, that's really, really interesting.
Okay. Final question. As a woman, how did you find dealing with coming through an addiction? Was there a particular another level to it because you were a woman? Did you feel any certain guilt or shame or expectation that, you know, that addiction shouldn't be there? I'm just interested of your take on it, if there was any effect, or if you think there isn't a difference between a guy going through the recovery from alcohol addiction to a woman. I'm interested.
I definitely feel that, yeah, it's really, really interesting, that point, actually. I definitely feel like with females, I feel that it's kind of that idea of the wine o'clock, the gin and tonics, and it's kind of all seen as like nice, light, bubbly Prosecco, and it's all happy and it's all an illusion. But I think it is different being a female. I think it's just, I think there's more stigma. I think it's kind of like, oh, you should be able to manage it, and oh, you can't drink that much anyway because you're a female, and like it's not like you're a lad, like drinking loads and loads of beers and stuff. So I did kind of feel a bit of that as well. And also I kind of think people were genuinely shocked, actually. A lot of people I talked to, they were shocked that I was saying, oh, my drinking has gone a bit out of control and I really want to change. And they're just like, oh, but you're just having fun. And I think you're just seen as like the party girl that's just like, wants to be everyone's friend. And I think that's really hard. But also at the same time, I think men have quite a lot of stigma as well, actually, because of the lad culture.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of pressure on men, even to drink. I'd say, well, equal on either side for different reasons. But no, I completely agree. I think there's a huge pressure on men to fit in, that they sort of are required to be able to tolerate a certain amount of alcohol, which I think is just ridiculous. With women, I feel like alcohol almost sexualizes women.
It does,
in a way. That if you don't consider yourself a drinker, then you are labeled as frigid or boring or simple, or whatever. And I think that for our generation, I pray, will change.
Me too.
As we go through.
Me too. I do have genuinely believe in that as well. I think we are sexualized and we are seen as, or she's easy or, whatever, by men or whoever.
Yeah, she's loads of fun because whatever, she'll have a drink. And
I remember times I would be out drinking with 6 guys. I memean, that's kind of the point when I was just like, oh, what am I doing? You're going out with 6 guys in a bar. I mean, it's just crazy. And but the thing is, you end up feeling worthless. You end up really feeling worthless. Like you're not worth anything. You're not, you're not valued. And I think, the media just doesn't help either, really, with all of that.
And it's almost that alcohol is advertised as this sort of confidence boosting, fun loving potion, whereas actually it has the opposite effect. It is degrading. It makes you feel worthless. It makes you feel whatever. And from hearing you speak, the yoga practice that you've discovered couldn't make you feel more empowered.
Oh, right? Yeah, definitely. It's so empowering. It's like taking back your femininity, your strength as well. I think it's really, really important. It's just taking it all back and reclaiming your power. And I think, that's so important these days as females. We need to reclaim back our power and our strength and stop feeling like the kind of helpless victims of our lives. We need to just, stand up and say we've had enough.
Absolutely. And almost stop trying.
Definitely.
In a way as well, or stop. That was definitely a part of my journey as well, to stop trying or to let go and surrender the need to feel validation from anyone else. Because the only true validation you need is from yourself. Definitely. I truly believe that.
I believe that as well. Yeah.
And you can drink all the alcohol in the world, but unless you do that inner work and find that self-love and that self-approval, those problems are just going to keep coming back. It's one vicious cycle, right?
Definitely. It's our lives are very cyclical. I find, like, behaviors will repeat themselves in life. I think this issue for me anyway, it wasn't just one drink, it was years and years of drinking. And I'm still young, so I'm fortunate that I've got a whole life ahead of me, and I've kicked it now, and that's it. And but I think it's my one thing is definitely like to say that, if any young viewers are listening to this, it's like, you can totally do it. not drinking at a young age, it's not shameful. There should be no stigma around it. You know, at the end of the day, it's more power to you. Like, so
yeah, absolutely. And I do think that normalization, that as you know, you're approaching sort of late adolescence and early adulthood, that drinking is just a normal thing that you do, and you go through your phase of trying out and, you know, being sick because of alcohol and all that. And it's like, why?
Why?
Why do we need to go? It's like some sort of weird initiation into adulthood, and it's like, can we ditch that, please? Yeah. Because, you know, I'd swap that any day for love, connection, community, support. The list goes on, you know. And I couldn't think of anything more empowering.
Me too. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Pip, any final points? Any bits of advice for people out there? I know you've already thrown loads of advice into the ether, which of course I am hugely grateful for you voicing that. But yeah, if you had to, I suppose, give one solid piece of advice to someone just starting their journey to conquer their addiction, what would you say?
I would say, honestly, just be fearless. And it's so it's so cheesy, but
no, honestly, it's not. It's cool.
You've just got to be fearless and just look at like life head on, because life it's not going anywhere. It's there. It's looking right at you. It's like, you can't ignore it. You just got to be fearless. And honestly, there's also loads of great resources on, I hate to mention Facebook, but there's some great sober groups. There's some great sober groups on there if anyone's really, really struggling. And there's some that really helped me in my early days. Beautiful communities of people from all around the world. It's amazing. So many great people. So absolutely. Well, do follow Pip on Instagram, and I'm sure you can find her on Facebook as well, and give her a message if you want to connect and talk about any of this stuff. But Pip, it's been such a pleasure. You are an inspiration and an absolute joy to talk to, and I'm just excited to see where the rest of your journey goes. I think you're going to inspire and empower an awful lot of people. Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was great. Lovely talking to you. You too. Thank you.